Facebook is planning to introduce a dedicated in-app news service to Australians by the end of the year, just months after enforcing a complete media blackout to Australian users. Joining me now live is tech expert EFTM's Trevor Long. Trevor, good morning.
Morning.
Great to see you. Thank you for joining me. What will this mean for Australian Facebook users?
It means there's going to be a more centralised location where you can just get the news from those pages that you follow, and also recommendations about news that Facebook thinks you might like. So Facebook's changes a lot. It constantly changes, but on a mobile phone, for example, down the bottom of the screen, you've now got things like Facebook Marketplace, groups. They keep adding those little tabs. What I believe is there'll be a little tab there, look like a little newspaper, and that'll be where you go to get news in your app. So basically, it's taking all the things that normally are scattered throughout your feed and putting them in one place so that when you want news, you can see it.
The timing is interesting, I've got to say. What does it mean for news organisations who have bargained with Facebook to share their content for so long?
Yeah, it feels like either a backflip or a weird situation for them to be in. But let's be clear, Facebook's been planning this for 2 years. They launched it in America a couple of years ago. They say they were always going to launch it here, and the media bargaining code just delayed things. For companies that have done deals with Facebook, this is where their news will go. So the idea was always that you do a deal with Facebook and this is where your news will go. Your news will be put in here, it will be prioritised, and you'll be essentially rewarded or monetising the fact that people are seeing that content. It doesn't actually mean anything different to the news feed. That list of things that we all follow and look at on Facebook is going to change much at all for the average person. Unless you choose to use that news tab, you're not going to see much difference.
2 years in the making, but still curious timing nonetheless. Now let's talk about Donald Trump. Of course, we know that all of his social media accounts were suspended, but now his fate could be decided in the coming days.
Yeah, they've got an advisory board. They call it Facebook's Supreme Court, if you like. It's the last port of call for appeals and things within Facebook's decision making. It's only less than a year old as a group. It's academics, lawyers, those kind of people who are going to sit down and go, was the decision to ban Trump a just one in terms of Facebook's rules, or should he be allowed back on the platform? And obviously there's pros and cons here in terms of free speech versus restricting fake news and hate speech. So it's going to be a very interesting decision. It'll probably take a couple of days, but essentially next week we will find out whether Donald Trump will be allowed back into Facebook, which would be a phenomenal growth for him, because obviously he'll say that he doesn't need it, but let's be honest, tens of millions of people following on Facebook will be his base. And if they do exclude him forever, then it's actually a very big decision for Facebook as to what else they can do and who else and what else they can ban. So while it's a good headline in terms of it's Trump, it's actually a very defining decision for Facebook around what control they have over who's on their platform. Yeah. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens here, and I think that by next week we'll know whether Trump's back.
It's very interesting to see, but yeah, as you said, his base really is on the social media platforms.
He thrives on that stuff.
He thrives on it. He really does.
The viral nature of Facebook is how his messages are able to get out, and that's essentially what he needs. Yeah. And it's also what Facebook doesn't want. So it's a very interesting quandary for the business, because it's also metrics for them. It's page views, it's people on their site, it's people using their app. It's an important thing for them to have him on, but it's not a good look for them to have him on. Tough one.
It's a tough one. Look, let's move on, Trevor. Apple will hold its first tech event of the year on Wednesday. What can we expect?
Strange one, because it's the latest in a year that Apple's ever had an event. Normally these events are big, they're in their headquarters in Cupertino, and they're normally device launches. This will be a virtual event again, which has been quite successful for them. We're expecting new iPads. A lot of rumours about other products, but I actually think that given Apple can have these virtual events pretty much whenever they want, this will be just iPads, new iPad Pros, new screen technology, and obviously they will hype up the power and performance of these devices. The iPad has shot back to popularity because of COVID. So many people working from home and working in different ways, that updating that old iPad and just getting into an iPad has been a big thing over the last year. So a very successful product for Apple, which I think they'll refresh next week, and potentially other products, but that would be my number one tip for the announcement. 3 a.m. Wednesday morning our time.
Okay, I'm sure a lot of avid tech users will be watching that one closely. Trevor Long, great to see you. Thank you for joining me this morning.